Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and today we're going to talk about boundaries. You've all likely heard the expression that good fences make good neighbors, and we tend to think of it in terms of good fences keeping people out, keeping unwanted things out. And I want to turn things on their head a little bit and talk about boundaries in a whole new way in order to maybe cause you to think about some things that are going on in your life in a new way and have some tools to restore your peace. Because you see, good fences actually help you keep your peace in, and that's really what boundaries are about. Now, you may have heard about boundaries before. You may even have some great tools for creating some boundaries in your life, but I'm going to bring you an aspect of boundary creation or lack thereof that maybe you haven't heard before. And you might see yourself in a new way and realize that there might just be a little or a big tweak that you could make that would improve your sense of well-being, your sense of peace, and your sense of happiness. So let's get started. Boundaries. Typically, we think of boundaries as a way, as I said, to keep people out, to keep bad behaviors out, to keep unwanted experiences out. But that's essentially just being walled up or walled off from the world. And I think that when we look at boundaries as keeping things out, we're essentially living in the energy of no. I don't want that, and therefore I need to protect myself from that. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm in that protection mode, that doesn't feel very free to me. It doesn't feel very peaceful or very joyful or very happy. But what if boundaries were more like, how do I keep my peace in? How do I take full responsibility for maintaining my integrity? How do I take responsibility for my emotions and my results? Well, then I'm responsible for my environment. I'm responsible for what I let in or don't let in. But it's less about blocking other people and experiences and more about deciding and discerning the experiences you want to have and standing for those things. So often when we don't have good boundaries, it's because we learn to be people pleasers. And I can relate to that. As a young child, I was a people pleaser, said yes to way too many things, wound up, in all kinds of situations that I wish that I hadn't because I didn't have the courage to say no. I was afraid of rejection, afraid of being different, afraid of being humiliated, all of the things that all of us as human beings are afraid of. And so I said yes to lots of things. And if I had to say no, I would make excuses like I'm sick or I have another thing or whatever, rather than having a real conversation and just saying, that's not aligned for me or that doesn't work for me. I would make up a reason. That's not having boundaries. That's being afraid. That's avoiding. People pleasing just leads to anxiety. I know I felt anxious about what other people thought about me. I felt anxious because I was out of alignment, saying yes to the things that I didn't want to say yes to. And I felt anxious sitting in situations where people were behaving in certain ways that I didn't know what to do about because I'd never really been modeled good boundaries. Now, when we talk about creating boundaries in a situation like that, it's one thing to just say, yeah, you can create boundaries, but what I like to look at is, well, what's the missing skill? If you've never witnessed someone with good boundaries and how they do it and how they speak it and what they're really doing, how the heck would you know how to do that? So let's talk about how to create boundaries from the energy of yes to keep your peace in and keep you in 100% control of the situation. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a really common one that comes to me in my coaching practice a lot. And it's someone comes and says, I have this person in my life that's super negative and I just can't stand it. They're complaining all the time or they're always putting down my parents or, whoever, my coworkers. And I've told them, you can't be negative around me or I'm not going out with you. And I have boundaries with them now. And I say, that's not really a boundary. Or the alternative to that is they make the same complaint and say, I can't stand it. I get so mad, but I don't say anything. Also not a boundary. Let's make a distinction here between a boundary and an ultimatum. An ultimatum is trying to manipulate someone else's behavior in order for you to be happy. It's if you do this, then I'll be happy. And if you don't do that, I won't be happy. That's an ultimatum. So if you are, if you aren't positive, then I won't see you anymore. That's an ultimatum. That is not a boundary. What a boundary is recognizing I don't have control over what any human being does or doesn't do, or what they like or don't like, or how they speak or don't speak. What I do have control over is what I will do should I be in the presence of that for me. What will I do for me? It has nothing to do with trying to alter the other person's behavior. So a real boundary in a situation like that would be to start with communicating. In the past, when I've been in your presence and the conversation feels very negative, it occurs for me as really draining. And the result is I feel kind of anxious and drained. And that's not what I want for our relationship. In order to keep the peace in for me, in order to keep my emotional well-being in a good space, if I feel like the conversation's getting more negative than I can handle, I'm just going to have to get up and leave, or I'm going to have to end the conversation. I'm letting you know ahead of time so that if that happens, you know why. That's a boundary. It's what I will do if that person does the behavior that makes me uncomfortable. It's what I will do. Now, I had this dilemma when my son was in addiction years ago, and he was waiting to go to treatment, staying at my house. And it's almost ridiculous to say to a heroin addict, like, you can't use drugs in my house. They're always going to sneak and find a way. But I was really concerned. I did not want to accidentally touch anything. This is like fentanyl was coming around at that time, and it's very dangerous. And I just said, you can stay here at my house and I want to help you. And I have a boundary. You cannot use drugs inside of my house. And if you do, then we will make other arrangements. You'll have to make other arrangements to stay somewhere else. And it will break my heart to see you have to make other arrangements, because I know they won't be like here. But it's not an ultimatum. I'm not trying to control you. This is just what I need to keep peace in my house. He agreed. And then, a few days later, as happens, he used in my house, and he made all kinds of reasons and excuses. But because I knew what the boundary was and I knew what I needed to do to keep peace in my own life, I just said, you're going to have to make other arrangements. It hurts my heart, but it's what I laid out. It's what we agreed upon. That's my boundary. And so he did. And the next time he came home, he was much more respectful of my boundaries because I held the boundary. He knew that my word meant something. Boundaries are useless if you say you're going to do something and you don't actually do it. And again, it's not about changing their behavior. It's about taking care of your peace. So if you're a people pleaser and you're feeling resentful, ask yourself, where do you need to create some boundaries in your life? What communication skills would you have to use to express yourself in a way that's going to be authentic to you, but it's not a manipulation or an ultimatum? Letting someone know what's okay and what's not okay and what you'll do if it gets not okay. That's a real boundary. It's simple, not easy, my friends. Now, these are the kinds of boundaries that we hear about all the time. And I still think it's great to have a reminder about how to create boundaries, because boundaries allow us to be peaceful. But here's a second kind of being boundaryless that I don't think is talked about enough. Unbridled self-expression, giving unwanted advice, inserting yourself in conversations that you weren't invited into, offering what people should or shouldn't do or how they should or shouldn't live, gossiping about other people. That's boundaryless in another way. The first bit of boundarylessness is not being able to put a fence up. And in this way, you're actually not honoring anyone else's boundaries. You're knocking their fences down. Now, boundarylessness in terms of giving unsolicited advice is usually coming from a good place. We think that we're being helpful. But in actuality, if you think back into your life, at any time if someone said, you know what you should do, you should live like this, you probably felt defensive inside. You probably shut down a little bit. So not only did it move you further away from that person, but it also made your advice completely useless because they're not open to receiving it. And so when you cross over boundaries and insert your opinions or try to rescue people and you say, I'm just trying to help, consider that you are boundaryless. And when you are boundaryless, you're chasing people. And when you chase people, the natural defense mechanism is for them to move away, to get walled off or walled in and wind up resenting you. Now, I have been guilty of this in my life so many times, offering unsolicited advice like a little know-it-all for so long, thinking I knew something. Also getting involved in gossip and complaint and different things at different times. And none of it ever made me feel very good. But what I really didn't realize was the why. And it's because I'm out of my territory. I'm crossing into a realm that's not mine. Now, I can't tell you what to do, but I have been practicing some things myself in the past few years. And this is what has worked for me. Number one, I realize that when I try to offer advice or I try to rescue someone, I'm actually disempowering them. On some subliminal level, I'm telling them that I don't believe they can solve their problem, that they're incapable, and that I know better than them. And that's not a message that I want to send to anybody. So I remind myself that rescuing is disempowering. Number two, I ask, are you looking for guidance? Are you open to hearing, my perspective on it? I ask because sometimes people just want to be heard. Sometimes they're curious about what I think. Then I've been invited and I'm not boundaryless. But then the third part of it is I speak from I. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've been witnessing a lot of tirades about the politics and things on social media, and I couldn't care less if people have different opinions than me about anything, really. I'm okay with that. And I was really trying to get to what is it? Why is it that some people I'm willing to completely entertain their argument, even if it's very different than my belief, but other people I get so defensive about? And it's the languaging. As soon as someone says, you should wake up and you should be doing this and don't you be this, and I feel attacked and I feel defensive. And if they hadn't said that, I may have considered some of the points that they made and integrated them. So learning to speak vulnerably and from I, like, this is my opinion. Here's my reasoning. Here's how it's impacted me. And it's up to you to think however you want to think. It's not an argument. It's not poking the bear, if you will. Because when we start to say you should live a certain way, what we do is we kind of attract all the people who are already living that way, and you get a gang, but you get alliances, but you don't change anybody's mind. And so sharing your opinion didn't really serve a purpose, unless you're looking for a gang, I guess. Confirmation bias that your opinion's right. And if that's the case, that's okay. I've been there too, done that too. What I can say is this: the more that I have learned to soften my approach, to ask if they're looking for anything that I have to say at all, And then to just share stories of how that thing has occurred for me and let people discover something for themselves, that empowers people. That allows people to make decisions for themselves. That teaches people to think for themselves. I'm on a mission to help people feel empowered. I'm on a mission to help people feel, that anything is possible in their lives. And if I'm telling them what they should do or how they should live, I'm not doing a very good job of that. Now, do I get it right all the time? Absolutely not. I have failed at this over and over again. I've caused problems in my relationships. In fact, I used to chase my husband all the time when we were having an argument or a conversation and say, you need to answer me now. I've already processed all of this. And my poor husband would just be like, what is happening right now? And he needed, an hour to process or think about what he wanted to say. And I would chase him and try to make him answer me. Well, that's boundaryless. And that just caused more problems. Learning to ask for what he needs. What do you need from me? Do you need some time? Are you even interested in what I have to say about it? Great. That has opened up some space to allow him to think about things and be heard. And that brings us closer together instead of further away. So whether you're in camp 1 of boundarylessness and you're saying yes to all kinds of things because you're people pleasing, or you're in camp 2 and you are chasing people and offering all kinds of unsolicited advice and telling everyone how they should live, I hope that you have discovered something here today that will allow you to move closer to the highest version of yourself and closer to the peace and harmony in all the relationships that you want. Now, if you are interested in working more closely with me one-on-one or in any of our amazing programs, please click the link at the bottom of the show notes or go to pamrader.com or shiftlabs.ca and check out all our amazing offerings. Everyone does better with a little bit of help, and we've got all kinds of programs that can help you get better at communication, help you relate to other people more effectively, and help you create the boundaries you need in your life to experience more peace, joy, and happiness. So until next time, I wish you alignment and joy as you walk towards your most authentic life.